Hey guys, Nintendrew here. Every once in a while, a game comes out that really blows us away. Titles like Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey are on the cutting edge of their respective genres and push the boundaries of what video games can be. But what about those games that may have been less quick to catch on that push the limits of their genres, or in some cases define new genres entirely? Well, today we're going to take a look back at 5 of those groundbreaking titles from the golden era of the Nintendo 64. These games have each been credited with showcasing, or in some cases inventing, new features and mechanics that would go on to influence the entire video game industry as we know it. So, let's get to it. First up is WinBack, Covert Operations. Originally released in 1999 for the Nintendo 64, this third-person shooter saw a release on the PlayStation 2 2 years later. The story follows a secret agent infiltrating the command center of a laser satellite in an effort to overthrow the terrorist threat that seized its control. The reason WinBack is considered to be ahead of its time is due to its innovative cover system, the likes of which gamers had not seen up until this game's release. Players were given the ability to take cover behind corners, then peek out from behind them to take down enemies. The developers of WinBack have said they were heavily influenced by Metal Gear Solid, and coincidentally, the game in turn went on to influence its own inspiration in the form of Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty, which implemented a very similar cover system. Certainly the highest form of flattery for the WinBack developers. Additionally, this same mechanic quickly found its way into Kill Switch, Gears of War, and many other titles in the years to follow. Today, this sort of cover system is nearly synonymous with the third-person shooter genre as a whole. Additionally, WinBack is credited for introducing the laser sight mechanic, which would also later be adopted by Metal Gear Solid 2, Resident Evil 4, and countless other third-person shooters. Next up is Perfect Dark. Now, I did struggle a bit with whether to include Perfect Dark in this video, because compared to the other titles, this game was pretty popular and sold over 2 million copies during its print run. When I think of games that came ahead of their time, I usually think of titles which had innovative mechanics that wouldn't really catch on until many years later. However, because it did introduce some very highly influential features to the FPS genre, I felt it still deserved a spot on this list. Perfect Dark follows the story of a secret agent named Joanna Dark, sent to uncover an extraterrestrial conspiracy spearheaded by a rival organization. The game is a spiritual successor to GoldenEye and borrows many gameplay elements from the former title. However, Perfect Dark also includes many additional technical advancements, including a high-resolution graphics mode and support for both widescreen displays and surround sound systems. But those features are not what earned it a spot on this list. Perfect Dark's most notable contribution to the 3D FPS genre is its fully visible and unique reloading animations. In addition, the game also has been credited as having introduced the concept of a secondary fire mode on projectile weapons, such as the ability to swap between burst fire and using a built-in scope, or between firing a single shot and executing a pistol whip. Of course, you don't have to look far to find these features in the modern FPS title, as they too have become synonymous with the genre. At number 3 is Morita Shogi 64. If you haven't heard of this one, don't feel too bad. Released exclusively in Japan in April of 1998, Morita Shogi was the sequel to Saikyo Habu Shogi, a game which was one of 3 launch titles for the 64 in Japan, right next to Super Mario 64 and Pilot Wings. The game is a virtual version of the board game Shogi, which has been played for centuries as far back as the 1500s. The game is also known as Japanese chess, or the game of generals. So what made this version ahead of its time? Well, Morita Shogi's gameplay was not particularly groundbreaking, but it had one feature that is unique across the entire console's library. The game's cartridge included a built-in modem for players to hook up the system to a phone line dial-up style and compete against other players around the country. Although many refer to the 64 disk drive as one of Nintendo's first forays into multiplayer online gaming, Morita Shogi actually launched nearly 2 years earlier than the 64 disk drive. Of course, Nintendo wouldn't truly get a handle on online multiplayer services until the days of Nintendo Wi-Fi connection for Nintendo DS and Wii, but Morita Shogi gives us a glimpse of what could have been in the 64 era. Next up is Body Harvest. Like Morita Shogi's predecessor, Body Harvest was intended to be an N64 launch title, but the game was delayed due to problems with Nintendo. Nintendo was originally on board to publish the title themselves, but due to issues with the game's violent themes, they backed out at the last minute, forcing DMA to find a new publisher. Eventually, the game was published by Midway in October of '98. If you've never heard of the developer DMA Design, that's likely because the company changed hands in 2001 and was renamed Rockstar North. Yes, that Rockstar North, the developers responsible for the Grand Theft Auto series. The reason this is important is because Body Harvest is credited as having laid the groundwork for the modern 3D mechanics of Grand Theft Auto since GTA 3 and other open-world action-adventure titles. The game sees players taking on the role of an armed soldier tasked with saving humanity from an incoming alien threat. Some clear similarities between the GTA series and Body Harvest are the ability to jump into any vehicle found in the game's overworld, and the freedom to take on the title in any way players might see fit throughout its non-linear sandbox environment. These mechanics would go on to dominate the genre. All in all, it's an excellent look back at some of the earliest inspirations for the modern open-world action-adventure game, including such series as Just Cause, Saints Row, Mafia, LA Noire, Sleeping Dogs, and many others. And finally, the last game on today's list is Animal Forest. If you're like me and did not live in Japan during the early 2000s, chances are you know this title as Animal Crossing for the Nintendo GameCube, but this game did indeed originate on the Nintendo 64. Exclusively launched in Japan in April of 2001, Animal Forest was slated to be a launch title for the Nintendo 64 disk drive peripheral and would have taken advantage of its real-time clock. However, due to the disk drive's extended delays, development was swapped over to a standard Nintendo 64 cartridge with its own embedded real-time clock, a feature which was unique to this title on the platform. The clock was used to influence in-game events in real time and is cited as one of the earliest examples of this sort of mechanic in a video game. Of course, Animal Forest would go on to see an upgraded port for the GameCube, which we're all familiar with, and it has spawned a number of sequels continuing into modern day. In addition to its own successors, Animal Forest's real-time mechanics inspired features in numerous titles to follow, most notably of which are the day-night cycles of the Pokemon series and real-time MMOs such as World of Warcraft. Alright, that's all I've got. I hope you've enjoyed this glimpse at some of the more advanced titles of the N64 era. Of course, do let me know down in the comments below if you have your own favorite titles that were ahead of their time in their own way. Thanks so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, please do consider subscribing to Nintendrew for all sorts of cool gaming content, and make sure to share the video with any friends who might find it interesting. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Bye! Hey everyone, thanks again for watching this video on Nintendo 64 games that were ahead of their time. Hope you liked it. If you did, here are a couple more videos you might like as well. As always, I've got links to all my social media, including Facebook, Twitter, and Discord in the description, and if you'd like to help out even more, I've got a link to my Patreon on the right side of your screen. Take care!